Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Everybody Has a Podcast. Man, doesn't it seem like everybody has a podcast
Everybody
these days?
out there. Everybody's grandmother, we're talking about everybody. Even I do.
And I am here with one of my friends, Rory Pendergast, who has his own podcast. And I want to immediately congratulate you on all of the success you've had super quickly.
Yeah.
Over 37,000 subscribers on YouTube. With you've now amassed over 1.6 million views on YouTube alone. Yeah. You have regular content going out, and this has all been just in the last 2 years.
Just the last 2 years.
So I am so proud of you. I had met you actually working on another job that we were producing something for, and I'm like, I got to get to know this guy. And then you have your own show, and I wanted to bring you here to Everybody Has a Podcast. So thank you for coming to the show.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on here. It's always exciting to talk to people about different things and to really dive into what it means, because that's what. So it's Unseen Impact is what I have, and the real thought about it is that yes, it's a legal podcast, but it's getting beyond the law and getting into the human emotion of it and like the humanistic part and what draws people to the podcast. So I think this one's fantastic.
Well, I love that, and there's a couple things that really stand out to me. First, and you may already know this, but for people who are just tuning in who don't know this, the three biggest categories that are growing in the podcast space, law is one of those three. So people starting law podcasts is one, trades is another. Tradespeople who are looking to buy other people's books or buy their competitor, or whoever, or expand their brand, and then the health and wellness. Health and wellness is like surging right now, but the law one I think has been surprising because I talk to attorneys and they go, why would I do a podcast? I'm a lawyer. And I'm like, you don't understand. You have so many stories. And they go, well, I can't talk about it. And you're like, no. I'm not telling you to name names. And I said, but you can illustrate what happened or what the case law is about this, or forewarn people and help people learn about this specific thing or that specific, and then here you are doing all those things. So I commonly now point people towards what you're doing because I'm like, here, go look at what Rory's doing. You need to do this.
It's doable. It's doable. You know what it comes, I was just reading or looking through some of the books you've got here. Fantastic. And what it makes me think about and what it all comes back to, and I've said this often, Napoleon Hill. Right? Think and Grow Rich. And there's some really fantastic old school recordings of him, right? This nasally sort of
like
mid-Atlantic.
Crackly,
Yes, wow. Ladies and I mean, it's old.
Yeah.
It's old.
It sounds old-timey.
It is old-timey, but one of the biggest things he talks about, and he studied business and what makes a person successful. And the number one thing he comes back to, and I read this 20 some odd years ago, and he says, you must have a pleasing personality. And I remember when I first read that and I thought, well, that's just silly. It sounds silly when you say it, but as years go by and I'm seeing it, you have to have a pleasing personality to make it in business. The biggest thing. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be warm and fuzzy. It doesn't mean you have to be the most outgoing. Even somebody who isn't outgoing, you can still have a pleasing personality. And one of the best ways to show that off is through just talking with people. And that's really what it comes down to, is that, we're all in this world just trying to make it. And I remember seeing something about what's the biggest use of AI. And I can't remember, it was like 2 years ago, it was number two. And then for this past year, the number one reason was essentially for companionship. And first off, I just think that is so sad that with all of this way to connect with people, that we have to use AI to have some sort of companionship. And so then you just take that thought down farther. And podcasts are just two people or three people or a few people just talking about stuff.
Having human to human connection.
Human to human connection. And one of the things that makes me not worried about AI taking over the world and the Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator coming through the door is that you cannot replace the human connection. The consciousness, and you get all philosophical about it. What is consciousness? And it's not a machine. It's two humans or more than one human just talking. And that's what the podcast is.
So, what compelled you to start one for your brand, though? Because, your brand is Rory Law. Your profession is injury.
I'm
a professional injurer of people.
I injure people.
My profession is injury. Injury law.
Injury law, same thing. It's hurtful.
It's the most painful profession you could be in. Oh, you don't hurt yet? Just wait.
Just wait.
So, like, I mean, was there like a compelling moment where you're like, oh, I need to start a podcast? Because there's the veil of, oh, it's popular and it's novel, I should do one. I don't want people getting sucked up into that. Like, the value for me is that there's people's stories, legacy, their experience that matters.
Absolutely. Yes.
And now, as a consumer, when I'm selecting somebody to do something really important for me, I'm like, well, how do I know about choosing the right person or not the right person? And now people more often are looking towards, where can I learn about this person before I make this big choice?
Well, I got 3 kind of points with this one. One of the things that comes to is, so there's a wonderful dude in Orlando, Florida. His name is Ian Garlic, right? Spelled Ian, but it's Ian Garlic. Very easy to remember. He is a YouTube guru. And so I read his book and started following him and attended a couple of his courses. But what he talks about is that the most kind of viewed part of the website, or for him in the YouTube page, is kind of the About Us. And then about what he refers to as the case stories, not testimonials, case stories. But really what both of those are is, who is this person, whether you're a plumber, a mechanic, an attorney, real estate agent, whatever. Who is this person? And what sort of good do they do in the world? And so for me, that was kind of wild. From the podcast stance, it was an odd one, because my wife used to always still does, listen to like a few of these podcasts, especially the murder podcasts, which some of them I could take, some of it I can't. It's just too much for me. But I always thought, I was like, psh, that's dumb. What do you listen to all these podcasts? And then I found a podcast I was actually interested in. And I was like, oh, I get it. It was about, law entrepreneurship, which for me, I'm a plaintiff's attorney. I'm a personal injury attorney. When I was in law school, the only thing I thought about personal injury was, those are the dudes and ladies on the back of phone books, when there were phone books.
Yeah.
And then you get into it and you're like, okay, there's a little bit more to it than just that. But it still is like podcasts. But the podcast entrepreneurship, so taking about, okay, you have a law firm, just because you're a lawyer doesn't mean you're a business person. Just because you're a business person doesn't mean you're a lawyer.
Right.
So how do you kind of mold those two? And it was fascinating. Like, I found 2 or 3 people throughout. One was in Virginia. Actually, 2 were in Virginia. One was somewhere else. But it was just wild. It's like, hey, these are just people that are doing it. And they're just telling their stories.
Right.
Yes, they're not divulging confidential information.
Sure.
But they're just talking about their experience, what they did wrong, what they did right. And when you find the right person that, they basically say, hey, this didn't work for us. Could work for you, but it didn't work for me because of my personality, whatever it may be. And then so I was like, okay, I had been doing some marketing. And the group would come in once a month, and we had our little ideas, and it was kind of it was good to get it up there. It was getting the same. And then the person who does my marketing is like, hey, you should do a podcast. I said, I'm not doing that. No, that's not me. And he says, no. It's going to be, because that's what we're going to make use of it for the marketing wise. So I was like, okay, for that one I can go. But I was really surprised at how much I've enjoyed it, and then really what I've gotten out of it. Because, he sold it on me as that, this is just part of a marketing plan. But when I get into it, it's just you. And then my wife is on the pod. She's I tricked her into doing it. One day I said, hey, we need the female view. Can you come down here? And then she says, why does it say co-host Carrie? And I said, well, because you're the co-host now. And it worked out well. And because, she doesn't have she's not a lawyer. And that's precisely what we wanted.
By the way, congratulations, because what works for one doesn't work for all.
Yeah.
So, Carrie, thanks for being a good sport.
Well, really what it is because I knew that she wouldn't take anything from me. And she just she would ride me, because you think about it, some people are like, oh, it's the attorney. Well, she doesn't think that, right? So she's it's a great counter and compliment.
Yeah.
But when so the whole idea is you get into this, and I really start, because what interests me in the law isn't whether it's a rear end or you saw this doctor, you have this diagnosis, or it's this amount. What it comes down to is it's the most basic kind of human function. You're a human, and something happened to you, and now you're off course. So how do we figure out what that was, and how do we figure out ways that you can help yourself get back to where you need to be? And then, so what are the discussions around that? And then for me, a lot of it is kind of this trauma thing, right? Whether it's trauma from like a physical impact or trauma from an emotional impact. For instance, I see a lot of guys, in the trades, when they get hurt to where they can't work anymore, you have destroyed that human. right? The soul of that human is about producing for the family, for everyone else. And so what does that look like? What does it mean? How can you recognize it? How can you not recognize it? How can you get to it?
Yeah.
And that's the human emotion to it. And even, this week we were talking with your friend, Claudia, about insurance. And so you think, well, what does insurance have to do with human connection? It's everything. It's everything because we all need it. But do you have somebody who's got in your corner, who's got your back?
Right.
And so when you can talk to somebody about that and sit down and you're not in your office, you're not in my office, we don't have papers in front of us. Right. It's just this sort of clean, area that we just got to talk about it.
Yeah.
And what are your experiences with it?
Yeah.
So for me, that's been fantastic.
What's something that you have been able to translate over from your practice experience into the podcast space? It's just a linear move. Because there's this, I encounter this stuff where people are like, oh, well, they're good at talking. Like they talk for a living, or they're good at sales, or they're good at this or that. And it's like, people feel like they have to be something different before they can actually do this. And, because I'm the one who says you don't have to, they go, yeah, well, it's your company. You're a podcast producer. I'm sure you tell that to all the boys and girls that talk to you, right? You tell that to all of them. And I don't, but I do want to encourage people that like, you don't need to be somebody else. And in fact, if you are trying to be someone else, it actually might work against you.
Oh yeah. No, you got to be yourself.
So what have you noticed that has been a direct parallel that you just do on camera and on mic that's similar to what you're doing every day in your practice?
Well, the biggest thing that I've learned is my personality fits well into this, right? And some of what it is that I've always been good at being myself and not good at trying to not be myself. And whether it's gotten me into some trouble sometimes. But overall, it's just I have a natural ability to kind of flow into this. And so, but still even me, there was some disruption because it's this weird sort of, you have to get comfortable. You got cameras in front of you, you got microphones, you got to think, am I going to be able to do this? Am I good enough? Can I remember what's here? But when you get to that point that you just say, you're here in some form or another as an expert. Maybe you're the best expert. Maybe you're the worst expert. Likely you land somewhere in between those two. And I do this every day. The people who are out there who might be interested in it don't do this every day. So when I talk about stuff that I do every day, it's actually kind of interesting because it's stuff that others don't do every day. So, for instance, when I was telling Claudia that, even though I'm a personal injury attorney and you make claims, you prosecute claims, insurance claims, I'm the biggest insurance salesman out there. Because if somebody comes to me, what should I do here? Buy more insurance. Protect yourself.
Yeah.
Protect yourself and others. So for me, it's easy when we talk, like talking to Claudia about this is like, well, I can give real life examples of what I've seen and what I tell others. And so it's as simple as that. You're talking about what you do.
Yeah. But I think people, and I hear this too, is like, well, what I do isn't interesting.
Oh yeah.
But, and I have to I pause just like I did now. I'm like, do you think it's uninteresting, or do you think other people think it's uninteresting?
That's it. Do you think it's interesting?
Sometimes it's an admission that they actually don't think it's interesting.
Well, and that's ding, 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 ding. That might be something for you. Maybe it's time to go find something interesting. So here's what's great. We had the first, with Claudia, it was all in Spanish, but the first insurance guy we had on was my insurance broker. And we needed somebody to talk about insurance. And I was like, okay, I think he can do it. Super nice guy. But I'd never, and he's got all of my insurance. And he had for a couple of years. And so I had him on, and Chad, and it was one of the best podcasts. We had him on again. I think we're going to have him on even a third time. Because Chad loves insurance. Wow. Loves insurance. He even tells us a story. He says, well, it was he and the second marriage, before he was married, when he met his second wife, they both had kids that are older. They were going to go up to Anaheim. And he says, well, so I told her she wanted to drive. I said, well, before you drive, I need to see your declaration. Right?
You see your deck page? That's hilarious.
But it's just like, because he loves it. He loves it. And he was the most interesting guy. We're talking about stuff that most people, if you were to get up and say, hey, today we're going to talk about insurance and declarations pages and what collision is.
But that says something though. That says something. Isn't that the guy you want?
Yes.
Like that's the guy you want writing your thing for you.
Yeah.
So in an interesting way, that's also kind of the point of having this show and also having other shows and podcasts is that like we have a choice in who we choose for things in our life.
Yeah.
And I want to choose the people that love doing the thing that they're doing for me and for my family and for my wife and for my business. I really don't want to have apathetic people I'm cutting a check to do thing transactionally. I would love it to be relationally.
Well, and there's very few things I think out there that fall outside of that desire, right? Everything you do, when you buy a car, right? You're likely going to buy a car that's one of the biggest name brands. You know, you're not going to buy some off-name brand car just because, one, they don't exist, and two, you know, oh, my neighbor built this. I'm not going to buy that one. But you have a choice. You know, what is it that is going to make me want to buy that car? Look, every big company knows that. Why is it that, you know, look at a Coca-Cola commercial, right? Especially a Coca-Cola commercial before a movie. Like, what is going on? You're like smiling with a polar bear. What does that have to do with selling? But you have a happy feeling. You have this happy feeling hey, if he can smile with a polar bear, maybe I can have that happy feeling of smiling with a polar bear. You know, it makes me think about one thing we were talking about before is, you know, your your Instagram grandma. Right. And it comes back to that idea that people want a connection. Yeah. They want this sort of thing. And so that goes deeper than just wanting to hear stories, which we all want to hear stories. Yeah. You know, I've got little kids, I was telling you every day, hey, Dad, can you read me a story? Well, of course I can read you a story. But everybody wants stories of some sort. And everybody is just thriving. They want this sort of connection. So you can have your Instagram grandma, but you can have it's the same sort of thread that goes through it. Yeah. When we're buying a car, when we're buying a house, when we're buying insurance, when we're doing anything, we want to have some connection to there. Because what it means is that, hey, you know, and I think really what this comes down to is that the reptilian part of the brain, right? Deep down, there's this reptilian part of the brain that its sole purpose is survival, right? Here in California 20,000 years ago, you know, if we turn a corner and that saber-toothed tiger's there, we don't want to be like, hey, guy, what's up? You know, it's that deep part, that survival, right? Why do we have kids? You know, now, I mean, originally it was we need procreation. We need to keep going. People weren't sitting around pondering, well, should we or should we not have children? It was that deep down part. Yeah. That deep down part wants to feel comfortable. It wants to be safe and it wants to feel comfortable. Yeah. And that comes down to anything that you're dealing with, that you're buying. And how do you show that as someone who owns a business or somebody who has something to offer out there? Is you have to show that you yourself are worthy of somebody talking to you.
So that being a critical part of like your humanistic approach to things, how have you observed any changed behavior in you now having done podcasting? Has it changed you in a way, like as a professional, as a husband, as a father, as a friend? Have you noticed that like it's kind of like seeped into now becoming part of who you are because you've done this for several years now? You're doing it regularly. You're having a wild variety of conversations, not just about like declaration pages and and cases, but also you have an educational bent to things too. Yeah, where you're telling people, hey, you need to be looking at these things for these reasons because in cases like this is what happened. Yeah. So, what's changed? What's changed with Rory since having started this?
I would say it's more focused. And what I mean by that is, so I'm naturally inquisitive. I always have been, right? I was born and raised in Helena, Montana. My father is from Deer Lodge, Montana, and it was my great-great-grandfather that came over from Norway and landed in Deer Lodge, Montana in the 1880s. Wow. I have like his declaration of intent to become a citizen in the district court for the territory of Montana, and then he became a citizen about 6 months before Montana became a state in 1889. Whoa. So that's like, this is like rural stuff. My mom is from a town of about 300 people, and so it's super rural stuff, right? And that was in my mind and how you going, but for some reason I just wanted to get out, right? I was curious about the world. I joined the Peace Corps in 2002, met my wife there. She was another volunteer. And you're just out there every day, just communicating with people, talking with people. So I've always been there. And it was kind of funny. I've got my grandfather who's from northern Wisconsin, he's like just over 100 years old, still an editor for Wikipedia.
Wow.
Yeah, George Pendergast, Google him, it's cool. But so he's still got his marbles, but he's still on there. So we come from, stock that is just kind of curious about things.
That's cool.
And in normal life, you can be curious, but you ask a question, maybe you think about it and it stops because life continues on. Oh, I have to file a brief. I have to do this. I have this appointment. My kid's dentist appointment. I got these things. What the podcast has done, I think, is it's made me stop and I have to think. It's like if somebody were to ask you a story, hey, what happened to you when you got into a car crash or when you graduated from high school or something? You can say it, but once you say it, it's gone. If they were to say, okay, write it down for me, you're gonna be like, it's gonna take you a while to write it down, but you're gonna think about it, and as you write it down, you're gonna process that, and you're gonna have a lot more questions. Well, hey, is this really what happened? What do I really feel about this? You have all of these sort of questions that come up. That's what's going on with the podcast, to where these are questions that I deal with or issues that I deal with every day, but I'm looking at them in kind of a deeper lens. And I'm really thinking about, okay, well, what does this mean? I deal with a declarations page every day. What does that mean? I'm talking to a neurologist about brain injuries. What does this mean? And so it kind of makes me pause and think about it. And so then throughout my days, often I'm thinking about, well, not just in the sense of how do we use that in a podcast, but more it's a question of what is the significance of that in my life? And whether it's my professional life or for the kids, or maybe it's just kind of interesting, hey, the newspapers, news posts, all of the social media, it's because we're interested in things out there. And so rather than just be a kind of an idle participant, you're an active participant when it comes to the podcast.
I love that.
You got to think about it. You sitting here and you're just like, okay, now what do because you're thinking about, hey, I have a job to do. We have an agenda. We have something to get done. I need to find somebody who can talk about this. But then you yourself were asking other questions.
Well, yeah, I'm sitting here curious too. I don't have questions. Yeah, I know where I want to have our conversation go, but I don't have a prescription of questions because I'm naturally curious in your podcast experience. And also, I set this up so that people could hear from peers. They don't need to hear from the guy who has the studio and the cameras and the team and all the thing. Like, they don't need to hear me talk about podcasts because I'm just selling it. I want them to hear from people who are having a real frontline lived experience.
Yeah.
And something, and I think this has just stood out to me about you is you're consistent, man. Your repetition is just there, but it's just so consistent. Is that just because you've fully embraced and just harnessed the you-ness? Like, I'm just me. I'm gonna show up and it might be I have to focus. I have to be prepared. Like, I need to be present. But it just seems like you're just always being you, and that's totally fine.
Well, again, that's one of the things that has been kind of a superpower is I've always been good at being me. Whether it was good to be me or not, right? Most of the time it has been. But we all have skills and natural skills and things that we really have to work at. And even with this, there are things that I've had to work at and, the technical items of it. But really what it is the other thing that I like about this is you really you're exposing yourself. And that can be very scary. That can be very scary. I remember because it was about, 2.5 years ago was the first time we had content. It took me 2 weeks to be able to watch it. And this wasn't a podcast. This is just some, little hits, some little shorts for YouTube or Instagram. It took me 2 weeks to be able to watch it. And then it was another 4 to 6 weeks before I could listen to it, watch it with the audio. Because it's like the first time you see it, it's like this rock and you're going like, But like everything with repetition, it becomes easier. Yeah. And then you just start to do it and it becomes easier and easier. And then you're like, oh, you know what? I should watch this to see, do I have a tick? Do I, is there something I say a lot? Is there, but for real, because there is, I notice the funny thing is oftentimes I'll talk and my head turns to the side. So you start to see, okay, what it is. And then you're like, okay, hey, no, this is all about we all want to improve.
Yeah.
what we do. So it's like, how do I improve on this? And then when you can get kind of over that, which is really getting over yourself, you can leave your ego at the door and just say, hey, good, bad, or ugly, I'm just going to do this. You can really learn from it.
Well, people suffer from imposter syndrome, and I've had seasons in my life where I felt like an imposter in a specific space or business place or time of life too. So I can relate to that.
Yeah.
What would you tell someone who's maybe feeling that way? And this is the saddest part to me, is someone who might have a very qualified career of 10, 15, 20 years or more, also then feeling like an imposter just because there's cameras, lights, and the mic.
Yeah.
But you've had this storied career for decades. You belong in your field, in your industry, you're passionate about it, you're excited about it, you do it well. You've had tremendous success. This doesn't change any of those things. No. What would you tell people that feel that sense of imposter syndrome?
I mean, it's there. It's what happens. And, the biggest thing is what I come back to is this. We were talking a little bit earlier so I played hockey in high school, and I loved it then, but, I was never any good and we weren't going anywhere. So I took about a 27 or 28 year break, and I started up on an adult league in January this year. And so, now you look at my Instagram feed and it's just a bunch of like hockey clips. But for the longest time, what you would find are these professional guys. And I'm like, that is too fast. And that's not me. I can't compare myself to the professionals. So ultimately I found like 8 and 9-year-olds, like the 8 to 10-year-olds that are on, they have coaches for that. I can watch that. Because I can sit them like, oh, I see what you're doing, and they're talking at my level. So some of it has to do with that. The imposterness is you're looking at the wrong level. And for those that are out there, like, I'm not here to compete with those national, nobody's compete with Joe Rogan.
Right.
You don't have to be at that level.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there that they don't want to hear it because they can't necessarily connect with somebody at that level.
Yeah.
But those people can connect with you because you're just a human. You're just a person that's there. And so the biggest thing is to start.
Yeah.
To start. It's a challenge. I think one thing that happens is with people is they become good at something. And, especially if you're good at something in business, you've likely in some ways always been good at stuff. And so then you hit, your late 30s, your early 40s, and you're sitting there, you're like, hey, I'm not old because I've got, 3 decades left before I got to worry about death. But you've been at it for a while, so you've created these habits. The brain has all of these habits. And so then you think, hey, what if I'm not good at this? Or what, it's this challenge that I didn't have. I mean, for me, that's when you really need to dive in. But really, it just comes down to, remember, you're doing this to talk to people who want to hear what you have to say. And that's likely not at the national level. It's going to be your customers.
And that brings me to something else I've been pondering a lot recently, and I think about this very regularly, which is separating how good you feel about the job you've done from whether it becomes popular or not. And,
interesting.
Vanity metrics is one thing. Going into creating a show as part of a marketing package, you're doing it because it's built in your package. I mean, it feels like you kind of did the same thing to Carrie.
Exactly.
Oh no, you're going to do this because we said you are.
You find something that works.
No, I'm the co-host. So I've been thinking a lot about how the vanity metrics aren't where. That's not where. I don't think that's where it's at. I think it's impact.
Yeah.
And impact is hard to measure sometimes because you can make an impact with somebody that doesn't hit the like button, doesn't comment, and never shares your video.
Yeah.
I've been impacted by a number of things that way. I'm like, oh man, that was so good. And I save it or whatever. Yeah. So where do you, I'll say, justify spending the time, the money, the resources, the prep work in doing this with either no expected outcome or a minimal expected outcome? How do you rationalize that for you?
So some of what it comes down to is that I'm a long-term guy. Right. And it's kind of funny because I am unbelievably impatient. Right. Micro level, I'm unbelievably impatient. Macro level, I'm a sloth. And so really what you need to do, and this is the big thing, is thinking about this, is that what I do today will have no impact for 6 months, a year, may have no impact right today. may have no impact on my business, on anything else for a long time. And that's okay, because what you're doing in it is that, okay, so now let's say fast forward 6 months. I don't know about you, 3 kids. I blink my eyes and it seems like 6 years go by.
Yeah.
And so it comes down to is like, when we hit 6 months from now, do I want to have this along with 6 months of stuff? Or do we not? And then it takes a long time, but it's like anyone who's made it to this level likely started from nothing, and they've had to build it up. And so look back at what you did there, and that didn't come naturally, right? I've been at this for 17 years, and we finally get there. And so really what it is just it's baby steps. You're taking these baby steps, and for instance, I've started to notice one of the biggest things is, you have we had a couple podcast episodes that we just needed to fill time, right? You're like, hey, what do we do? This wasn't necessarily in the plan, but let's talk about this case or that case or this issue. And they were some of the best items because it was raw, it was humanistic. But the biggest thing is that, so we had one where there's this client who had suffered a mild brain injury. And so now anytime, and in it, he had a bunch of different issues that he talked about. It took him a year to realize this, but everyone else around him knew it. And that just kind of some of the issues that he has with it. And so now I get a phone call and somebody says, well, whether it's their family saying, well, he doesn't get it, or somebody's saying something, they say, hey, watch this episode. Watch this. Now, maybe they watch it, maybe they don't, but the fact that I've sent it to them, it really sets you at this level. Now, is that rateable? Is that trackable? Not easily, not with what I'm doing, but in my gut and in like my heart, I know that it makes an impact, because at least then you're saying, hey, somebody's going through something right now. They may not fully understand what it is. And I don't care what it is, whether it's personal injury, medical, whatever, you're trying to do weightlifting and you can't get your squats quite right. Anything. Somebody's going through it, and that person has helped that person. Person
now that thing is there for them at the time that they need it, not at the time that you made it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of cool. And then really, I think, like, honestly, it sounds kind of corny or silly, but I think I've become an even better attorney, because really what you're looking at is all of this is about a human connection. And the you don't have a human connection unless you really have to like care. And then you really have to have, you really have to get in and deal with it. Think about it with yourself. Well, what do I think about this issue? What is this going on? What is that going on? And so then when you can get that out to people, they feel it and they know. They're drinking the Coca-Cola with the smiling polar bear.
Polar bear.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
that's fat. So I watched you on one of your episodes. You were talking about how you have an approach angle and a perspective of the river. Yeah. And looking at it from the other side of the river. What does life look like for the opposite side after 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Is it weird to be a guest on a show?
No, it's cool. It's cool because so here's what's the best part about it is that it's all of a sudden I'm like this, like this Pac-Man. I just want to eat stuff up, consume it, get into it. And it's the same sort of thing, is that you start out with one idea about what you're going to have, what the podcast is, what it's going to do for you, or what I'm going to get out of this. Oh, it's going to be, I'm going to do this episode and I'm going to get some sort of business. Yeah. And then really what it turns out to is that I'm going to learn more about myself and what it is that I really do in this world. Man. And so for that, being on this side, it's because I love this. Stop and think about what you're doing. Stop and think about what you're doing and why. And so for being a guest on it, that it makes you think the same sort of thing. So
a couple weeks ago, I was at this national conference. It was for BNI. I was out in Orlando, Florida, and I was recording one of the presenters who's a friend of mine, and he was talking about how 10xing and scaling your business and all these things, and what it takes to 2x your business is not the same as 10xing, because with more effort you could 2x. You can't just put more effort and do 10x. And one of his things he was talking about was non-monetary. He's saying, and I don't just mean this in a monetary fiscal sense, and he was talking about a season of his life when he was enlisted. And he was in the Army. And he was talking about how that experience 10x'd him as a person.
Yes. And
that it 10x'd him as a responsible person and matured him as a young man into an adult, a more mature adult. And that even though the financial reward of being in the military is not there. It was there for him in his growth.
Yeah.
And to look at things, he was challenging everyone.
And it's still in there.
And it's still in there.
Still in there.
And this goes to what you were saying a second ago, is because that person is the person who I needed to be, so that the business part of that could 10x that part, because that person finally met that moment.
Absolutely.
And you just were saying how the podcast has actually helped you now become even better as an attorney, because, just because it's now folded in to part of who you are and everything you're doing.
Yeah. And it's storytelling. And I mean, I don't care what you're doing in life. It's all about a story. Everybody wants a story. The podcasts are stories, books are stories, movies are stories. Look at all the streaming content out there with all of these television, not even television programs, right? It's endless, because people just want it, because that's what what we need in life.
Where did you come up with, or not where did you come up with? I guess, where would you echolocate the origin of your compassion for the other side come from? Because in your field, to the lay person, it's like, oh, you're a personal injury attorney, you're hunting money. You're just looking for a settlement. You're trying to angle whatever you can to get that money for the client, and then you're going to get your payout. Where does your source of compassion for the other side come from?
I think deep down, when you grow up, I always thought, Helena, Montana, it's the capital. It's the capital. So I always thought, hey, I live in the big city. I go back now and you realize you're like, it's really not that big, right? It's a pretty small place. But it doesn't matter how rural or not rural you might come from in Montana or any sort of rural place. The only way you make it is if you have a community, and together everybody makes it, right? I'm not saying socialism. I'm just saying that it starts at this idea that, hey, for me to go forward, I need to make sure my neighbors are going forward, because they're making sure that I'm going forward. And it could be something as simple as, hey, it's December 29th and it's 25 below outside. And my elderly neighbor didn't plug her car in last night. It's not going to start. How's she going to get to the grocery store? So it starts with that. I grew up Catholic. Still am Catholic, but grew up Catholic, and there's you attend church, you attend mass, and there's this idea that helping others. And so we've always had that kind of in my mind, and my parents made sure to instill that in this. Like, you have what you have because of all these other people around you, and make sure that you help. So, I go to college just because I didn't really want to go to college. My dad says, hey, you can do it, whatever you want, get a degree. And then I graduated from college. I'm like, well, I don't want to get a job, right? That sounds terrible. I've got friends getting jobs. I don't want to do that. So I joined the Peace Corps. Not to say that it's not without a job, but I joined the Peace Corps. And so that was, at 22, 23 years old, I go in. There were no, Guatemala was only 6 years out of a 36-year-long civil war. So there really was no cell phone infrastructure. Some of the larger places you had cell phone, but so it was beautiful. You were disconnected from everything. Wow. And every day, and I lucked out. I had a wonderful job while I was in there.
This is the early 2000s, right?
Early
2000s. 2002, 2003, around there?
2005 is when I was in there.
Got it.
And so I ultimately worked at a place where I designed and built gravity flow water systems. And so it's something that people wanted. Communities would go out of their way for this.
Wow. And
it was a great organization, had everything set up. But I go out there, with this little Abney level, I do the design, I'd put it into an Excel sheet, and we'd have, we'd do the whole thing. But when you start to see what people don't have, and yet what they can do with that. And then the biggest thing that I saw there was, because you had nothing but time. And so you're pondering, why is this different than where I come from? And some of the biggest things are access to information. Now, granted, you could say maybe the internet has given you some more information. If somebody really wants some sort of book or information, they can get it. Is it good access? Who knows? The other thing is access to money, loans. Whether it be you want to buy a piece of machinery or you want to go to school. They don't have it there. And so I came back to the States, and you have this sort of empathy, I suppose. And at least, it's not this natural given empathy, but you're put in a position to where you can actually think, hey, what is it like for that person I'm talking with, or this person that's going through? And then in this particular field, in personal injury, which I imagine any field can do, is you think about, okay, this person is at my office right now or is on the phone. Where did they come from? What are they going through? You know, one of the things I've got a person who, one of her main jobs is just to call friends and family members and talk to those friends and family members about what the friends and family see with the claimant, with the person who got hurt.
Yeah.
We can say, hey, that person is telling us one thing, but what do you see every day? And you learn something about the person. You say, okay, so, you know, they show up, they're angry or whatever it may be. That's not coming because they're a jerk. It's becoming because something was taken from them.
Yeah.
And so then it's this idea about really thinking about, okay, what is the driving force here? Whether it be good, bad, or ugly, what is the driving force? And so to be able to do that, you have to kind of stop and listen.
Yeah. I think that is so under talked about as a topic these days.
Yeah.
It could just be the way I'm viewing things and what I'm seeing in the algorithm, what it's showing me.
Yeah.
But the distinct lack of compassion and care for even more things now than yesterday, even more than the day before that, and the year before that, and the decade prior. But at the same time, I'm oddly also seeing a resurgence of compassion and human contact. And then you see it I'll go into micro, like people connecting with each other off screen.
Yeah.
I'm saying a lot more often these days, we're even more connected than we've ever been before because of the digital world we live in. And we're also more lonely and disconnected.
Well, going back to it, the AI, they're looking with all of this sort of connections out there, with all of this ability to talk to people, but we're using AI for companionship.
Yeah, I don't like that. I really dislike that actually, because no, I don't want to go. There's a whole tangent there, but I dislike that because there are humans that are around you, or that can be around you to help advise, guide, and give wisdom and direction and discernment for the thing that you might be having trouble with and struggle with, and they can reach you at a human level that a machine can't. A synthetic answer might have had a human input at one point, but I need to know what's actually going on in the moment and the broader part of you, not just what your input was on that prompt. What I was going to say is that I'm noticing that micro and macro, more people are trying to get together in person in little clusters and tribes and groups. But then also, like, I'm hearing like the event industry is blowing back up again.
Yeah.
I think LinkedIn is getting into like event planning and like corporate planning, like that's happening. I'm seeing like hotel and motel and boutique hotel experiences now being about like the experience and the amenities and the ability to like heighten the overall experience versus just have a room and cool room service or whatever. So as much as on one hand, I'm saying, we're being less and less compassionate, I think on the business side, macro, there's a lot more thought going back into the human experience,
because we're missing
coming back.
You know, you think about it, if you're just scrolling on your phone all the time. I mean, again, I go back, my wife used to get on me about it because I would compare everything to the Peace Corps. And I mean, now it's been 25 years or so, but you're looking at it and I just think about it. I was like, we didn't have a phone. I would go to the internet cafe once every 2 weeks. And it was so awesome because there's not something like, and it's not, we're just naturally drawn to that sort of stuff. And so then, but you finish and you're empty, that did not fill your tank. How do you fill your tank? One thing I was what just kind of struck me is answering this and going back to the question about, well, how do you convince somebody to do some sort of podcast? So imagine this. Imagine you've been doing what you're doing for 20, 25 years, and you have a friend that calls and say, hey, I know my kid or somebody's kid, they're looking at this industry, they're going to high school, they're going into college. Do you mind taking them out to coffee and talking to them about what you do? What do most people say? Absolutely. I'd love to. And then so that person who may think about podcasts, I don't know what that is, they're going to go to coffee and they're going to tell that person's story with energy, enthusiasm, and but that's who you're talking to, right? But it's the same sort of feeling with this humanistic thing. You're not doing it because you're like, whoa, it's what I'm supposed to do. I've got my little gratitude I need to do for the day, and this is what I'm going to do. No, you're doing it because deep down you want to do it. You want that connection. So.
What are you most excited about, like on the horizon of your show and what you do? Is there something that you have like that you're starting or that you're pivoting or changing that you are particularly eager for?
Well, one of the cool things about it is now we've got enough stuff out there that we can look to see what it did. You know, that first year you're starting, like I said, sometimes you're like,
great point.
We got to do stuff. What are we going to talk about? This case, it was kind of cool. Let's talk about it. Right. So you have all of this information out there, and now we can kind of analyze that. Right. Or you can find somebody who's much better at analyzing it than you are if you're me, because I'm not that good at analyzing it. But you can say, okay, hey, here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. And then here, like I've got this list of like 500 questions out there. What are the biggest legal questions out there? So what we're trying to do is slowly answer all of those questions. And it's stuff that people have every day. Yeah. And it's just one of those minor things like, okay, so we're going to
type it in the search somewhere.
Type it in the search somewhere. One of the other things we've just started, we finished one. It's kind of like a side gig, not necessarily law related, but called Tap In with Rory. Right. And so this one, we did it at the Working Class, which is my neighbor bar and restaurant. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I talked to a Jeff Person, who is a AP history high school teacher here in Otay.
Okay.
And I was talking to him one day because his kid's my kid's age, and he knows his stuff. You know, founding fathers, all this stuff. I was like, dude, you would be great to talk to about this. So for 4th of July, we did one, and then we're going to have it run as well right about election time. The 4th of July one's talking about the Declaration of Independence, what it means, what from the historical perspective.
Oh, neat.
And then going to talk about kind of elections, what are the, Congress, what is the true purpose of Congress, these sort of things. Not what's going on right now.
Right.
Where did we come from? And so now we're looking at really what are some other items that we can cover. And with that one, what I want to do is, the backdrop is some sort of bar or restaurant, and just because it's relaxed, and just talk to people.
I love that.
I talked to Cloudy about, would love to do one with her, and really, what's your story? Where did you come from? What interests you about this?
Yeah.
So I can kind of pull this information out of people because it's wild. People are interested in it.
I love that. And I think everyone has like kind of their own hero journey, right? Their own story. But I think that there's so much similarity that we are led to believe that only happened to us.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that's ever experienced this. Except me and all these other 100,000 people that have also had that exact same experience. Yeah. It's an old funny saying, you're unique just like everyone else. Yeah. I think about that a lot too.
I like that.
The things we have in common and the things that make us different.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I love that. And I love that you're tying that, because it's also easy when you witness someone through the screen to just think, okay, that's just the composite of them. That's the one thing they do. Their entire life is this one thing. It's only injury law, injury all the time, injury every day, injury every week, month, year, decade, blah, blah, blah. But like, you have other interests.
Yeah.
History, if history is an interest, be interested in it, right? If you're interested in celebrities and real life TV and whatever, or true crime, those true crime podcasts.
Yes.
People are this composition of so much more than just the thing that you hire us to do. And there's fascination in that.
What it comes down to is we all want to associate with people who are similar to us or have similar likes and hopes, goals, dreams, desires. I think about this, Carrie was also a Peace Corps volunteer. And so our Peace Corps boss, who we've stayed in contact with, he was Guatemalan and worked for the Peace Corps for over 30 years. I think he told me once it was like 1,700 volunteers or some maybe 7, I can't remember. It was a huge number of people.
Wow.
But he said that he sees a lot of people who get married, the Peace Corps volunteers. And so one day I said, well, why do you think? He says, well, you think about it. One is that you've shared this experience.
Yeah.
But before that, what is it that brought you to this experience? That no matter where you came from in the United States, you had similar thought processes that got you here. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. So for instance, even right now, whenever Carrie's been in the position where wherever she works at is hiring somebody, she's from Southeast Massachusetts. Her dad's Portuguese from the Azores Islands. Okay. You have anybody with a Portuguese-sounding name, or somebody says that they have some association with Massachusetts, she keeps that resume.
Yeah.
She keeps that resume. If I'm doing something, I see somebody with Montana on it, I keep that resume. I don't care what it is.
Right.
You could be the worst candidate ever. I'm going to talk to you, right? Because you have that. And that, it gets back to what Ian Garlick says is, why do people go to the About Us and the testimonials? It's because they want to know about us.
You. Yeah.
They're at your site because they want your services.
Yeah.
But they're not going to go with your services until they can figure something out about you.
Yeah. That's so important.
And that's the big thing to do it. And
well, I didn't know this was going to happen, but I think I have an about you I want to ask you about. I want to know about how you feel about something.
Okay.
Can I pitch you an idea? Because I don't know a lot about this, and I don't know what's going to happen. I had seen through social media on video that there is there's a push, an initiative to put on the ballot that personal injury attorneys can no longer sue rideshare companies.
I've got all sorts of thoughts on this. All sorts of thoughts.
Let's go right into it. So I want to hear your personal opinion. What is being proposed, and why is this a terrible idea? Yes, that's my bias already.
So it's Uber. Uber has dropped all sorts of money. So what it was is that, I mean, to get wonky on it, the consumer attorneys, so plaintiffs' attorneys, people who do personal injury, plaintiff side personal injury, we're called consumer attorneys. And so our main group is the Consumer Attorneys of California. And apparently what we had in the coffers was fairly low. And so Uber thought that they'd jump on this. And I mean, what they're trying to propose is terrible. Essentially, it's not just would harm the plaintiffs themselves. Because, the way that plaintiffs' attorneys don't charge unless we win. And so most claims, if they had to pay for them, their average claim probably nets $20,000 to $30,000, right? Nets. So you look at the fee for that. If you don't have, and most of the people who have this happen to, they don't have the money to pay an attorney $200, $300, $400, $500 an hour.
Yeah.
And so if you carve out the ability for an attorney to handle that claim's, you're done. You're not going to have a claim. But so what Uber's basically said is that they want to limit the amount that the plaintiff's attorney can earn in a fee. And by doing so, they want to limit what your doctor can get paid for treating you, which I think is a dumb, but I mean, it limits what doctors will get paid, because what it says, it limits all this. I mean, it will destroy any sort of claims. And
that's pretty bold, right?
It's bold. It's bold.
I feel like that's very publicly pretty bold.
And on top of that, just read about Uber's assault and sexual assault issues. It's like once every 8 minutes they're having calls in, and they're not doing anything about it. I don't think it will pass. I think that especially right now, it's. I mean, I think any time is the wrong time to bring that, but in this sort of political environment, it's really the wrong time. I mean, yeah, if you want to go after certain things about how the system works, I get it, right? I get it. If you're unhappy with certain things, but limiting what happens is bad.
Okay, so then do you this is going to be the skeptic side of Andy asking this question. Like, do you think that they're just trying to toss some bait in the oil? Let's see what happens. Let's throw all this up there, and let's just see what the response and reaction and the pushback is, and then we can regather ourselves and figure out what we really want over here at a later date and time.
That's what I think. Again, I think what it was is that they saw that the coffers were low, and Uber was going to jump on it. And now I think they're getting some pushback. They're probably I read something somewhere where they're going to ultimately spend like $450 million, and they may lose. So it's all.
That's a pretty big cash burn.
That's a lot of money.
Holy cow! That's money they could be using on settlements.
That's money.
I'm just kidding.
Or training the right people to hire, drivers that don't sexually assault you.
Man,
it's terrible. So it's the Uber thing. I don't think it's going to really go anywhere. Hopefully not. I mean, it would cause some massive. Here's the thing: is it's not just about it would hurt, the plaintiffs' industry. It will hurt plaintiffs. Anyone who is in a car crash, you are going to be.
Well, yeah, I immediately go and think like, okay, so I'm going to self-represent myself to the insurance company that doesn't want to pay me against an insurance company that has representation. How am I going to do that now? And then it goes back to the money thing. Oh, do I have $200, $300, $400 an hour to buy someone's 50 hours to do that? And then the payout's going to be exactly what they cost, and I make there's.
It just doesn't work.
It doesn't. I don't know how the mechanics just don't work out in my mind, even with the limited amount I think I know.
No, and I think they just thought that Uber just thought that there was this opening that they could jump in, and it's just crazy to backfire. Because I mean, I think deep down, look, nobody wants anything that's excessive, right? They don't want money grabs. It doesn't matter who you come from or where you're at. Like deep down, we all are looking for fairness. Talking about what we, one of the cool things about this tap in or being able to have your own podcast, and you can kind of veer from the law, or you can veer from your main topic and talk about things that interest you. But the founding of this country, was it because we wanted to make things unfair? Or is it because we wanted fairness in this, right? I mean, the Declaration of Independence, the majority, I mean, the parts that we know are it's a small part of what the actual Declaration was. Most of the Declaration was about all of the wrongs that Britain was doing, was inflicting upon us. So we're looking for fairness.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think we have a justice bent.
Yeah.
For sure.
So that's what I think. I mean, when it's fair for most, life is good.
All right. So before we run to and through the finish line, I want to ask you a couple of more rapid fire questions. Okay. I think. Who is someone you want to have on your show, but you haven't been able to get on yet?
Ooh.
Is there someone you've been kind of eyeballing? You're like, ooh, I would love to get blank to come and be a guest on my show.
You know what? Actually, it's kind of funny you say that. So what I would love to do is talk to some sort of law enforcement agency about what their take on dealing with car crashes right after, like how to be safe. What is the traffic collision report? What is all these things? You know, getting back to the idea, that's boring stuff, right? If you were to say as a high schooler, you go to a 14-year-old, say, hey, you want to learn about traffic collision reports, right? But really, when you need to know about traffic collision reports, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So that would be cool. I'm actually I've reached out to San Diego, but here's the thing: is that most people are worried about the plaintiff's attorney. Luckily, I've got enough kind of content out there, so I can say, hey, look, no, this is about information. So that would be one.
Okay, I might be able to help with that. We'll see. We'll see. I can't commit. I can't commit someone else to it. But
as I was pulling in, I saw two officers. I was going to stop. I was like, hey guys.
Hey, I got a quick question for you guys. One of our most successful podcasts we've been helping support is Fit PD, run by Juan Cephas, who is a instructor for the San Diego Police Academy.
Oh, that's
and he's done 25 years as that, and he'll know somebody who knows somebody, I'm sure. But
beautiful.
Lots of quality conversations on his side. It's interesting that that I have you here today because one of the things he's trying to do is to increase the defensive tactics training for peace officers.
Oh, cool.
Because there's too many injuries on the job, too many injuries to civilians and suspects because they're untrained.
Yeah.
Not untrained, undertrained. I shouldn't say untrained, undertrained. He's corrected me a couple times, as you can see me self-correct myself, because they're undertrained a little bit.
Because it requires a massive amount of training.
Yes, and also I think I've learned that the limit is very low, the threshold's very low, and also untrained people will reach for their taser or their sidearm a little too quickly in a situation where they could just be managing the suspect. But anyways, that was the first question. Who do you want to have? Maybe we can help with that. The second one is this is going back a little bit. I've studied a little bit about Larry King. I used to watch a lot of interviews he did back in the day, and he's probably one of the best interviews ever. I wanted to ask you, who would you want to share a meal with, dead or alive? Who would you want to share a meal with and just be around, spend time with, ask questions, listen and learn from?
Oh, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I mean, really what it comes, I'm fascinated with the American Civil War, right? And so it feels funny to say, oh, I want to go back and talk to somebody from, the 1860s. But really, Grant during that time, Lincoln, something of that, just to see like what was going on in your mind about how this was processing, right? Because when you think of it, especially like this Civil War, I mean, it's the United States brutally killing each other and terrible, terrible things going on. And every day they're seeing that. Yeah. Maybe some of it is just because it was a different time, a different life. But really, like, what were you going and what were you hoping to achieve? Looking back now, 100 some odd years later, 150 years later, what were you hoping to see? Yeah. Is this what you were hoping to see?
Wow, interesting. That's a great question.
I think that would be cool.
Is this what you thought it would be like having done and fought for what you were fighting for? Wow.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about TikTok or Instagram. Just like the fundamental way that
the fundamental outcomes.
The fundamental outcomes of us as a country, as humans.
I like that.
Is this what is all of that pain and suffering you saw and went through and caused? That's right? Fascinating. Is this what you would want to see? You're
the first person to say that. To cite the Civil War specifically and talk to someone from that era. That's amazing.
Carrie would make fun of me. I took a class on the Civil War in college, and it really changed my trajectory of actually being able to graduate. Because I'm not dumb, right? But when I was in college, I had no desire to be there. And I
was terrible at history. I got like a D plus. I got a D plus in history. But now I love history.
Yeah. Well, because I know what you mean. But I took this Civil War class, and it was phenomenal. And so then, reading the Gettysburg Address and like looking at, I love how short it is and how powerful each word is. So for the longest time, I'd cut it out and like self-laminate it with tape, and I had it on me. And so I start dating Carrie, and you talk about this as a way. Luckily, there's very few of us out there, right? She's like, what?
Dear mom, dating new guy, carries around Gettysburg Address. We'll write again soon, I hope.
But exactly.
Oh my gosh.
All right, next question.
So, so Gettysburg Address. Okay, Civil War. All right, you carried the Gettysburg Address around in your pocket?
I know I did.
How long?
It was a couple years.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think that's neat.
Every so often, you just wondered about it. I should be able to. Here's the other thing.
No, but I think that says something about you. I think that says something about your character. Yeah. Like I remember I mentioned this thing earlier about consistent in this like space, but like. Again, and I'm just having this conversation with you now for the very first time, which is like there's continuity in that. Like you show that in a variety of ways. I like that.
Well, because the thing about it, you think about it, what they say that the human brain doesn't fully develop until age 26, and I'd have been like 22 then, so my brain was not fully developed at the time.
Yeah. That, and then we learn about it after 26. Go, oh, that's what was going on. We learn that in retrospect in some cases, and some guys later than others. I'll admit, personally. Okay. This is my last question and my final question. I like asking people is if I put you in an arena with 100,000 people, you get handed the microphone and I get to say, Rory, who do you want to thank and what do you want to tell them? Who do you want to thank and what would you say?
Well, really, honestly, I thank my wife because, Montanans, I think most of us are kind of wild. And so I grew up wild and I kind of wanted to see things. And I remember when I first met her, we had gone into staging here. I'm talking about the Peace Corps a lot, but it was this staging where they basically you got people from all over the United States. They fly. It was in Miami at the time. And I remember she walks in, I thought, wow. And then we didn't connect until months later, really. But it just, you meet, there's this Jimmy Buffett song from probably the late 70s or late 90s where he's, long after Margaritaville, where he says, I wanted more than one until I found the one I wanted. And so then I was like, boom, right? And everything changed. And some of it has to do with, as we were joking about the brain kind of develops, but it's more than that. You meet somebody where you want to be better. And that's what it is. And this past February, celebrated 20 years of marriage.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. I mean, honestly, I'm here today because of her.
Wow. Congratulations. And thank you, Carrie.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you and I met last year. I want you to close us out. Oh, first of all, let's if you're okay with this, let's put your contact information in the description box. If anyone has any questions, follow-ups.
Absolutely.
I'll also put the link to Rory's channel on YouTube in the description. Wonderful. But I want you to close everyone out by telling the story about your finger and the the throbbing middle finger and the looks you were getting post-injury in your training.
So I broke my finger a couple months ago, and I had this splint, and it was supposed to work, but I may have done a little bit more than I should have. It didn't quite work, and so it was a Friday, and I'm at the orthopedic surgeon's office. She took an X-ray, said, "Whew, that's not good. We need to fix it." So then the next Monday, I have this surgery on my finger. I thought she's like, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal. If they put you on Twilight or something." Well, I get there, the anesthesiologist puts me out. I wake up and my surrounding fingers are black and blue. So I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And they had this huge like padded thing, and it was giant. And so then, but if my hand was too low, it would just throb. And then so I'd try even right here, and it would throb. So I'd have to have my hand up like this, up above my head, and it's just a giant middle finger. And so and especially driving, because you're like down, or whatever it is with driving. So I'm sitting there driving, I got this massive middle finger up, and I started noticing people looking at me. They would just kind of look, because what looks weird is that, it's not your like usual trajectory, it's like up high. And so then I have to kind of turn my hand and kind of move it back a little bit. But luckily, the throbbing's gone down a little bit, so I'm not flipping everybody off.
Thank you for telling that story. Yeah. And I also love that right now you just said the usual trajectory.
No, you're going, it's kind of more like, it's more shoulder level. You're out there.
I just learned something new about Rory, too. He has a normal trajectory for his middle finger and a medical trajectory.
I like the normal and the medical trajectory.
Oh, my
medical trajectory, sir.
Rory, what a great end to our conversation. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I haven't laughed like that in a while.
Well, thank you for having me on. This is great.
I appreciate it. Thank you for thank you for being here. Hey, you all, thank you for watching. Everybody Has a Podcast. I really appreciate you guys chiming in, sharing this with people who you know, love, and trust, and you're trying to encourage along their way of making podcasts too. And like I say, even to my own detriment, I don't care if you do your podcast with us or you do it here. You might be watching this in some other part of town, or you're not even in San Diego or California, but I really want to encourage you to get out there, share your story, share your expertise, your wisdom, your discernment, the things you can do to help people in your own neighborhood, in your community, and do it with passion and some energy, and be a great person out there. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you again with another great guest next week. Bye.